Welcome back to Kentucky Sports Television. We are happy now to be joined on Skype by one of our favorite guests, Mike Decourcy from the Sporting News. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Happy to do it, TJ. Good to see you.
We have a situation that has been developing for several weeks here in Kentucky with Kyle Wiltjer. He's a guy that has played some big minutes on a national championship team, played a big role last season, now potentially transferring maybe to Gonzaga. When you look at Kyle Wiltjer, if he comes back to Kentucky, he'll redshirt. Is he better off coming back as a redshirt and playing 2 years at UK? Or for his career, do you think it's time for him to move on and show what he can do, maybe with a bigger role?
No, I hate to be a waffler here, but I think that either one of them can work for him. I think the first thing that he needs to spend next year not playing. And so regardless of whether he were to return to UK or go somewhere else, he needs to not play. He clearly did not use his 2012 offseason wisely. I still remark about how when I was listening to John's press conference, the May press conference, he said the first thing that has to happen is that Kyle has to work on his body. And I was surprised at that because I figured, well, if he came back skinny, then there must be absolutely no capacity for him to get stronger, because how could he not have spent last summer killing himself to get stronger? And yet, I think it's pretty much a consensus now that the capacity was there, and he wasted last summer, and he paid for it. Wherever he goes, he has to get stronger. He has to get more fit. But that doesn't cover it, because even stronger and more fit, his defensive fundamentals are so poor and inexplicably poor that those things have to be worked at. Would they be better off trying to cope with Julius Randle in practice? And people like that, Decourcy Johnson, et cetera, or the people that he'd go against at Gonzaga? I think that in terms of improvement, there's no doubt that the next year spent, he'd be better at Kentucky in terms of improvement physically. But in terms of performance and being able to apply whatever growth he obtains during 2013-14, perhaps it's better elsewhere. Because even if he's back for the Wildcats, there's a very good chance that UK will have better players by the time he gets back on the floor. So it can go either way. I do know that he definitely needs to improve no matter where he goes.
What do you think his upside is? He seems like a player, when you look at him, some of the skills that guys can develop, like shooting and kind of a feel for the game, he's already excelling in those areas, but it's more of the athleticism, the defense, and kind of those fundamentals. Are those things that he can improve upon enough to be, whether 2-3 years down the road with the red shirt, he's an NBA-type prospect, even if he stays at Kentucky and plays kind of a role piece?
I think he has the potential to be an NBA player, not a great NBA player, but somebody who plays in the league. His athleticism is not great, but it's not as poor as it looks when he gets himself high-sided on ball screens all the time. It's because he doesn't pay attention to the scouting report. He doesn't pay attention to making sure that he's in position. He doesn't get beat on straight-line drives because he's not quick enough. There are lots of players who are as athletic as he is, or perhaps even less so, who know how to position themselves on pick and rolls, on center pick and rolls, so that they don't get beat on straight line drives. He just doesn't put himself in those positions because he's not paying attention. I don't exactly understand why that's the case. John and Orlando and people like that would be better positioned to explain why he's always out of position. But I thought he showed good feet as a freshman, certainly good enough that he could be a useful defender with his length, and he did not develop at all in those regards in the past season. And, sometimes people might think I'm being too harsh, but I never criticize players for what they can't do. I only criticize players for what they won't do, and that's what Kyle didn't do last year and didn't do last offseason.
And last year was kind of a wake-up call not only for Wiltjer but the whole team. And we hear coming out of these early practices or these get-togethers on campus that the focus is a national championship. And even the guys that weren't on campus have learned something from last season. But there are three guys that are missing, and they're off and on will be coming here on their own dime. That's the Harrison twins and James Young. When you look at this group of young players, and they, of course, have goals of a national championship, do you think this sets them back at all, not having everybody on campus this summer?
Well, I don't know that necessarily sets them back, but it's a missed opportunity. If all the players were there, I mean, after all, Julius Randle's among the guys who could have played USA basketball and chose instead to go to Kentucky. If that time is to be best spent it's best spent with all of his future teammates and not just some. As well for the Harrisons, they've got farther to go than Julius Randle does, because Julius is going to come on and he's going to do his job from the jump, whereas the Harrisons, their reputation is as a couple of players who need to learn how to play well with others. That's what the people who've seen them the most say about them the most in regards to their weaknesses. So if they were around those guys for the full summer sessions, then they would have gotten more engaged with them. They would have gotten more involved, and they would have gotten a better understanding of what's expected of them. So I think it's a big missed opportunity, but it's not anything that they can't cover if they listen well, if they pay attention to the coaches when they get there in September, and if they utilize their practices well.
Now, the Cats, of course, are predicted to be, by some, the #1 team in the country, but certainly in that top 5 mix. Can you take us through your legitimate, the teams you would say these are the favorites for the national title before the season? We hear a lot about Louisville, Michigan State, those teams. Who are the teams that you like right now in the offseason heading into next year?
Well, I think you mentioned 2 of them. Each of them has issues that will have to be conquered. Louisville, do they have enough height? Teams don't usually win a national championship with a 6'8" center. Montrezl Harrell's pretty special, and that's probably where he's going to play. They also have a young big man who didn't play last year, who might be able to make a difference, but you never know until that guy gets on the floor how much of a difference he can make. That's really the issue for them. I certainly think they're well covered at the perimeter spots, and certainly Shane Bohannon and Montrezl Harrell are both terrific, but hard to win with a 6'8" center. I think that's an issue. At Michigan State, point guard, Keith Appling has been good enough to win Big Ten championships, not good enough to win big NCAA tournament games. He's got to be better. He's got to be more of a creator for his teammates. He's got to be less sloppy with the basketball. Last year, Michigan State had significantly more turnovers than they did assists. You don't win a championship with that. That's just not going to happen. So Appling's turnovers have to go down as well as his teammates, or they're not going to win at all. Duke certainly has great players, and they're very well covered 1 to 4. You're talking about Rodney Hood, Jabari Parker at the forward spots, then in the backcourt, Quinn Cook and Rashid Suleiman, as well as Emil Jefferson to play as a utility player. And of course, you've also got Tyler Thornton in the backcourt to knock out for either of the 2 guards I mentioned. So they really are terrific 1 to 4. The 5 spot is a mystery. Marshall Plumlee didn't really play the last 2 years, injured, inactive a lot of the time. How much can he help them? And again, can you win the championship without any center? If you play, say, Jefferson in there, you're really basically playing with 3 forwards. Can you win it like that? So those are all questions for all those teams. Kentucky, I think we know the questions. They're young, but they are more talented than everybody else. And then, of course, I think you have to keep Kansas in the mix because of Wiggins. Wiggins is extraordinary, but they have more rebuilding to do than any team in America. They're just rebuilding with great parts.
Now, if Kentucky wins the title, they will again go down in history with the other great teams. There's a debate before we let you go. The 2012 team with, of course, Anthony Davis, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist won a national title. If they played the 2010 team with John Wall and Eric Bledsoe, DeMarcus Cousins, those guys, who would you take? You know, not today, but the 2010 team, frozen time, 2012. Who would you take in that matchup?
I would take the 12 team because it had less weaknesses and greater strengths. Less weaknesses in terms of perimeter shooting. Deron Lamb and what he was able to do from the perimeter. Darius Miller toward the end of his career was a much better shooter than he was as a sophomore. So I think those 2 elements would really help. You have Anthony Davis. Certainly Davis would have some problems physically with DeMarcus Cousins, but we saw him play against bigger players. I think Cousins would score, and maybe he'd get Davis into foul trouble. That would be the 2012 team's one real good chance at winning the game would be if Cousins were able to get Davis into foul trouble. Obviously, there's a much better point guard in John Wall than Marcus Teague. Teague had a very fine freshman season, but Wall was sensational. That would be a clear advantage for the 2010 team, but that didn't necessarily get the 10 team into the Final Four. I don't think it would take them past the 12 team either. I'm going with the 12. Better chemistry, a better best player, and better perimeter shooting.
And better results, of course, and everybody was happy about that. Mike Decourcy, Sporting News, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate your time.
All right, you bet, TJ. Thanks very much.